How does that happen? How does that happen that way? I mean, why is my experience as a fan of this team nothing but misery? It's misery being a Colts fan, okay? Fuck you, fuck me. What am I doing over here? I'm out here in Long Island, New York, 800 miles away from the city, rooting for this damn team, and they do nothing but let me down over and over again. Now listen, I don't want to sit here and pretend that the Colts are the worst team in football, okay? They're not even the worst team in the division, okay? They're not the worst run organization in the league. It's nothing like that, okay? I don't want to sit here and make it like it is something that ultimately it is not, because I don't want to take away from the point that I'm trying to make, okay? But it's not so much about the record, right? The wins and losses is one thing, and people will say you are what your record says you are. Well, okay, then why even talk about it every week, okay? There's context beyond that. That's why we're here, okay? It's the ways in which they find to disappoint us. It borders on bizarre. It doesn't border on bizarre. It's flat out bizarre, but it's like it's cursed. Like, I mean, whether it's blowing a 33-0 lead against the Vikings, you think about the one time they tried to run a QB sneak on a punt with just a center there. I mean, the incompetence, the ever since the days of the greatness of this team, it has turned into like, I mean, we don't even go out average. It's like an average team. It's a mediocre team that loses in ways that are just flat out inexplicable. I mean, whatever it takes, Jonathan Taylor break and run, and what to me looked like, and I'm not talking about yardage wise, was situationally felt like the biggest run he had since the season he had with Carson Wentz. I mean, that run was huge in that moment. They were right there. I mean, the Colts had it in the palm of their hand, okay? The offense was inept, but Jonathan Taylor dropping the ball before the end zone, a rookie wide receiver throwing a touchdown to the other damn team. I mean, they do not stop coming up with new ways to lose. I just don't understand it. And the real problem that we're starting to have here, right, is that we were sold a lie coming into this season. And listen, I didn't have high expectations for this football team. I thought they'd be doing about exactly what it is that they did, which is fighting for that 7-seed playoff spot, that 6-seed playoff spot, okay? But do not forget what we were told coming into the year by our general manager, who I continuously come here and defend over and over and over again. He said, we like the guys we have, which has kind of turned into, if there was like a Chris Ballard doll and you pull the string behind them, right? And he kind of makes he has like a library of 4 or 5 lines that he says. That's turned into one of them. We like our guys. And he essentially said, I'm paraphrasing, that they thought Anthony Richardson brought them over the hump. Okay? That's what it was. And obviously, that was not the truth. So you go out in the offseason, you do next to nothing while the rest of the division makes moves. Now, whether or not it worked out for the rest of the division is besides the point. Ultimately, all we could do is look at you as fans. And you did next to nothing while the team that won the division did a whole lot of a lot, and they were the ones that beat you. So while losing to that team, you were also complacent to say you could walk into this season the same way. And listen, I'm as optimistic as anyone, okay? So ultimately, if you're going to tell me that Anthony Richardson is the one that could bring this team over the hump, I could get behind it for 1 year and say, you know what? I'm willing to see this thing out, okay? I'm willing to see this thing out. But now, what I once viewed as patience, diligence, and level-headedness, I'm starting to view as just complete and utter arrogance and really bullshit. I mean, it's becoming a thing where it's like, dude, you're kind of a bullshit artist, and whatever you're going to try to sell us going into this offseason, I'm not entirely sure that I'm buying. I mean, the offense in this game, a disgrace, right? Like, we could do the blame game. We could say it was this guy's fault. We could say it was that guy's fault. The play calling, even though, how can you call plays for a quarterback who's having a tough time completing 50% of his passes? No disrespect to AR. I think he has promise, okay? I do. I think Anthony Richardson has a lot of the tools you would need to be the franchise quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. But one of the things you need to do to play quarterback is consistently complete 50% of your passes, at least. I mean, my goodness. And I understand we take those lumps as they go, but everything is misaligned here. You have a quarterback that needs time. You have guys in Kenny Moore, Zaire Franklin, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, Quentin Nelson, et cetera, et cetera. You kind of have a lot of these win-now players that are in their prime who have already been through this stage of their career while you're still having a rebuilding offense with just youth all over the place. And you look at the core of this team. I mean, how is it, right, that Jonathan Taylor is the one that lets you down? And I'd like to be polite to Michael Pittman Jr., but I mean, good grief. How does he let you down, right? Like when you have guys like A.D. Mitchell out there and Josh Downs, who plays like he's the most experienced guy on the team, you have Anthony Richardson. You have all these young players around, okay? Guys like Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman Jr., who both just got paid for their services here, they're the ones letting us down? I mean, you just fundamentally have an issue with the fabric of the team, and people want to throw around the word accountability, and that's all good and well. And maybe that's true. Like, to say there's no accountability, I think is a stretch, okay? But is there too much of a leash here, okay? And maybe some would say that's the same thing. I think it's a little, there's always a leeway for you make a mistake here, and we're going to let you work through it. But is this one of these situations where it's like, I don't even know. Like, is it just, are we too nice around here? Are we too nice? Like, it's one of these deals, and you're seeing guys being friendly with dudes. I forget who it was. Maybe one of you guys will see it, but they're showing TV, and the guy's walking back to the huddle, and he's smiling and keying with one of the guys on the Broncos. You're down 24-13. I mean, what the hell is going on here? And I don't want to just be super emotional about the entire thing, but you got to ask yourself some serious questions in the offseason, because I look at the team, and I mean, we still got more of these games. We still got more of these games, right? We still got more of these games. And we're going to have to talk about them as it goes on. But you can't help but look at the offseason. And you look at the roster and say, okay, listen, man, we've got players I like. We do. All the guys I mentioned, the Quentin Nelsons of the world. I mean, the line in shambles. In all fairness, the offensive line, and the Colts have good depth on the offensive line, but you can only go so deep into the well and expect to play consistent at that part of the side of the with that unit, okay? But you look and you say, okay, you have guys like Quentin Nelson, you have Bernie Raymond, you have a lot of guys on the defensive line we like. The linebackers, I think we could add someone there, but you still look at E.J. Speed and Zaire Franklin and say that these guys are dogs. They could go out there and play well. Young safeties we like. The corners, I think we have guys that are good third corners that could work in the second corners, but we don't have a guy. But ultimately you look and you say we're not that many pieces away, but how many seasons in a row can you look and say we're not that many pieces away before you look at the guy putting the pieces in place and say, hey, well, at what point are we going to get those pieces, huh? At what point are we going to get them? And the only thing I could ask myself in this offseason is, okay, even if I feel like this team is kind of close, all things considered, because they are. That's the nature of being 500 and kind of fighting for a playoff spot at this time of the year. You are kind of close, okay? But I can't help but ask myself, what is going to be different this offseason than the other ones that we've seen? Because make no mistake, the only thing you could do now, the only perk of having a quarterback that's a rookie on a rookie contract is the fact that you have money to allocate to other resources to put a proper team together to make sure that that guy has the best team chance to succeed. And that's not to say that you can't also add talent through the draft, but my goodness, you got to do something somewhere, even if, right? Like, you look at this past offseason, and not that I don't think, what's his face? I don't think that, who is it? The guy who signed with the Texans. I don't think that Danielle Hunter would have made the difference here. But you look and you say, okay, Danielle Hunter with this Colts organization took less money to go play for the Houston Texans than he would have made here, okay? And I don't know what the solution to that problem is. But you look and say, not for anything, no disrespect to the state of Indiana and the city of Indianapolis, but there is nobody other than maybe me, because I'm so obsessed with the team, there is nobody outside of the state who looks at that state and says, yeah, that's where I want to go, okay? So we have a problem on that front, because guys ultimately, particularly in this day and age, aren't going to want to go to a place like Indiana for the same amount of money that they would make to go somewhere else that perhaps has a bigger market, more things to do, et cetera, right? And you look and you say, well, okay, you take that into account. then you have a conservative GM, and you have a roster in which is right there. It's right there. But ultimately, they come up short year after year after year. And there seems to be a level of them kind of being comfortable with it. And I know that's just me kind of grasping at straws. Like, what's my evidence of that? Well, my evidence is the fact that we continue to see the same exact thing year after year after year. And we consistently come up short in those moments. And the defense in this game, I mean, I'm just on a rant of the highest order. The defense in this game played well, right? That's one thing you could take away. The biggest positive of this game is the defense played well. But what I am not going to do is fall into the trap of saying, okay, everything is okay here. Because if there's one thing we know about the Colts defense, when they need to show up, right? When the defense needs to show up and show out for us to have a chance to win, they will. But what they will never do is give us that same performance when we're actually scoring points, okay? The defense does whatever it is that they have to do, if at best, right? No matter what it is. Well, that was the wrong way to put it. My point is that if we need them, it's just the defense is just never going to. What do you get my point? I'm fucking at a loss for words here because this was now Monday morning. I'm recording this, and I'm still just as mad as I was yesterday. I'm just as mad as I was yesterday. I mean, there are changes that need to be made. And even after a game like this, you can't come out here and say you're bringing back Gus Bradley, who's at the bottom of the league in every statistical category, again on this defense. Again, we look at the players. They're there. You look at a team like Philadelphia, okay? And a guy like Howie Roseman, to some degree, is comparable to Chris Ballard in his approach and the fact that he's good in the trade market, but he does go get free agents, but he does stuff in the draft, right? So these guys are two guys you could look at and say, this is comparable, okay? But Howie just puts the chips in a little bit more. And when their defense underperformed, he fired the defensive coordinator. He got Vic Fangio and took a lot of similar players and turned it into a real good defense. I mean, the Eagles are elite, okay, on the defensive side of the ball. And that's a big part of their success this year. So you look at the Colts and say, well, okay, you can't look at this damn game and then all of a sudden make it like the rest of the season and the time that Gus Bradley's been here does not matter. You got to get rid of him. And listen, I'm the last one to call for someone's job. You got to get rid of him, okay? And you got to tell me, right, what is going to be different this offseason? And I know you can't give away the game plan and exactly the positions you're going to target and all this type of stuff. But what I can't do is listen, you sit there and take some pseudo accountability. And I'm talking about Chris Ballard, of course. I can't sit here and have you take some sort of pseudo accountability and say it was my fault, this, that, and the next, and then go out in the offseason and do the same exact thing. It's a complete slap in the face to the fan base. It just is. And I'm not saying overhaul the whole thing and make emotional decisions, but show that there's a level of urgency to come out here and try to put a winning product on the field for a fan base who has not seen us win this division or even sniff it in about a decade, okay? It's getting out of hand. I'm pissed about it, and we're going to have to sit here and watch the rest of the season, but I'm going to start looking into the offseason. I mean, there has to be someone. Mike Vrabel can't get a head coaching job anywhere. He's not good enough to be the defensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, I'm not saying that he's going to be available, but you're telling me there is nobody that is going to be able to be a defensive coordinator for this team in the name of continuity, right? We're going to sit here and say that Gus Bradley is good enough, right? It's one thing to go out there and approach it like we're okay being good enough, and that's that. All right. But be good enough. We're not good enough, okay? And that's the problem that the Indianapolis Colts face. That's the reality that we face as fans, and we're just going to continue to watch this thing go this way until I don't know what. Like I look at this right now, and I say I'm not even optimistic about next season. And this is the first time I can say that in years. I'm not even optimistic about next season. It's how bizarre this thing has gotten. And this was a reaction to the Broncos game. I didn't say one thing about the team. But yeah, I mean, what else is there to say? There's plenty else to say. That's what I've got. Until next time, my name is Justin. This right here was the Ryan the Bench Coach podcast. And fucking as always, I mean, go Colts. I can't believe I keep saying it.